Hey everyone, I know it's been a while since our last episode of Horror and Persona, but it's the Halloween season. You guys know I wouldn't let this pass without giving my favorite horror RPG franchise a brand new video for the occasion. I hope you all enjoy, so let's get right in.
It follows.
One of the most dreadful feelings known to man is the feeling of being watched. It's hard-coded into our DNA considering the plethora of creatures our ancestors have been hunted by over the course of thousands of years. So it's absolutely no wonder stalker enemies tend to make a really huge impression on us. Even within horror games, where technically everything is already scary, be it through the game's setting or even enemy designs. There really is just something about an enemy that can and will relentlessly hunt you, or that can even just pop up at any time, that really can build this sense of oppression like very few other things do. Even taking something simple like the SAX from Metroid Fusion, no matter how scripted the sequences may be and how limited they are, it's just horrifying. But as many of you know, the Neo Persona games have its very own pursuer enemy that has been the source of countless mysteries, discussion, and definitely grief for players all over the world: the Reaper. Now, I need to open with saying plenty of designs are unsettling within the Persona franchise, especially its demons. So believe me when I tell you, the Reaper is not just scary because of his appearance. It's not just because he dons a tattered black trench. It's not because his mask covers his real face. It's not because he's covered in blood. And it's not because he wields two enormous revolvers. It's because if you think you can recklessly grind and level up without a care in the world, neglecting the game's core essence of time management, you can and will be directly punished with this unbelievably powerful shadow prowling after you and your team. If I'm being completely honest, I think hearing his chains clang around in the distance at times is far scarier than when he's in eyesight of you. You just never really quite know if your next turn will even lead you out to the next floor, or put you right in his sights. And heaven forbid you don't have any more go-ho-ems. Yeah, you're pretty much just going to be rolling the dice on survival constantly. Basically, narrowly escaping death until your next opportunity to save. From a completely gameplay angle, he's already scary enough. I mean, the dude could steal hours and hours of your progression if you're not careful. And I will say, as a penalty, he's designed pretty much perfectly. I appreciate that he could even follow you between floors, giving him this truly pressing presence. But even aside all of this gameplay stuff, there's just something very off-putting and quite unsettling about his very existence. You see, the Reaper is this entity that seemingly acts independently of everything, no matter what game it appears in. And with its own agency, it seems like its only goal is to kill people. Now, why does it choose to kill people? Well, I guess its name is the Reaper, so that's far from the most pressing question. But what I find truly bizarre is that the Reaper has the ability to seemingly be aligned with people and potentially make contracts with them. Persona 4 the animation has this truly bizarre scene play out. When you and Adachi have their battle, there is something very strange going on that I've scarcely seen people mention. As you and Adachi battle, it seems for some reason the Reaper is fighting alongside Adachi. This alone rings so many alarm bells because across every single Persona game, the Reaper is not even an unlockable persona. No one has control over it. Mind you, even watching this is just a bit odd because the whole time you're also just thinking to yourself, yeah, Adachi parallels Narukami a lot of the time, and it makes sense that he would also potentially be some sort of wild card, but because of his lack of nurtured bonds, he probably never just awakened to the ability. It's all just so much, and by some unknown method, Adachi is commanding or at least aligning with this creature of mass destruction to do his bidding. I find it significant just for the fact that if Adachi is not in fact controlling the Reaper, it implies that the Reaper of its own volition chooses to align itself with the doom of humanity. And unlike entities like Nyx, that operate as more of a force of nature, the Reaper actively has some sort of bizarre grudge against humanity. Now we have to keep in mind here that not all shadows are innately evil or even hostile for that matter. And when they are, usually at the very least they can be bargained with. But the Reaper defies all of that. It says nothing, it relentlessly pursues its violent nature and hunts down humans, and after the deed is done, let's say he kills everyone. What happens? Who knows? Is it really just a powerful shadow? Maybe, maybe not. But the truth is, we don't know.
Tick tock.
I truly feel like the Dark Hour is often immediately associated with Tartarus, for most people at least. And naturally so, because Tartarus is one of the most contentious parts of Persona 3 as a whole. It's grueling and at times tedious, but if you ask me, it's part of the journey. When I personally hear the Dark Hour, I don't first think of Tartarus. I think way back to the very start of our journey. Our very first trip to the Iwatodai dorm. So get this, you're on a train to a place that we as the player don't know yet. Seems our main character's enjoying some tunes when all of a sudden, it's all just so imposing. The electronics losing their power, the sky turning green, an unmoving clock with not a single click, and our very first greeting while exiting the train station is a set of coffins, strewn about with pools of blood for good measure. It's all so otherworldly and grungy. The sight is just grisly, to be frank. And as gripping as the set piece is, it's not the part that necessarily got my attention the most the first time I watched this scene. What's always fascinated me about this scene is the reaction of our main character. Or should I say, lack of reaction from our main character. You know, I understand it's a video game, but truly think about this. Any person, fictional or otherwise, would naturally be kind of freaked out by all of this. At a minimum, show some fear for their life, maybe show some pensiveness to proceed onward, and at the opposite end of the spectrum, completely freak out and lose their shit. Rightfully so, I may add. But against all odds, rather than showing any level of fear or discomfort, Makoto simply leisurely strolls along to the dorm with seemingly no sense of self-preservation or even urgency. Now, I personally have heard a handful of theories surrounding this. Some admittedly will just chalk it up to poor narrative presentation as a way to make our super cool protagonist look like he's not some punk that's gonna be, threatened by anything. A way to show that he's some sort of hard ass in the face of it all, no matter what. But others would argue something pretty interesting. They would argue that his reaction makes plenty of sense from a narrative perspective, considering what we learned of Makoto's link to, death itself. His reaction itself displaying an unwavering fear of death, as his soul is, binded to an entity removed from humanity. The most absolute form of death itself. It's very reminiscent of another certain protagonist from another series we may have to discuss one day. However, on the subject of Makoto's reaction, personally, I believe it could go either way. Maybe it really was brilliant foreshadowing from Atlas that was a truly meticulous setup for a story reveal for this JRPG protagonist. But I can also admit, it may be just as likely that this might be a Silent Hill 2 kind of, happy accident, where the character's uncanny behaviors and mannerisms simply add to this mysterious, otherworldly, bizarre, but admittedly very memorable horror.